What should we probably do? Well, a kind of gatekeeping within the fire community, or at least as I have read into it. Like, is there a real proper age range for early retirement, aka, can you get there too early or too late? I know it's all semantics, but details do matter. Hey, Zempak here. Now I'm gonna nitpick about this community that I love very, very much, right? Which is, of course, the fire community. Here I'm gonna do that thing where I say all the nice things first before, taking a crap on it for its perceived faults, right? Now I think fire as a movement is wonderful for fiscal discipline or just regular old mental discipline, right? To be exact. It will pretty much help anyone who's ever looked to cut expenses, to make more income, or generally get to a more secure financial headspace, right? So that's all good. But no movement is perfect, especially one that's dominated and spread by social media and anecdotal stories, right? Now, I can't really complain because here I am doing exactly that, right? Still, I do know trends in the space, though, and that's where my complaint and the topic for today's rant comes from, right? Because what I've heard is all about there's kind of an idealized age range for retiring early. So I'm going to talk about whether I agree with that or not, especially on whether some age groups are perhaps a little too early or too late. I know it sounds a little weird to call any kind of early retirement too late specifically. After all, if you're late for early retirement, then you're just retiring at a regular time frame. No? Anyway, if you're intrigued by what I might say, please subscribe, like, comment, and share and all that social media buzzwords, or whatever, because I'm rich enough for me, and I'll be great regardless. So first, is there such a thing as retiring too early, such as before you hit 30, right? Oh boy. Controversial take here, but I'd actually say yes. I mean, that is besides the whole, it is just extremely unlikely to happen to begin with, okay? I mean, those are the practical objections because the younger you are, the less likely that you're going to come into some great fortune of your own accord, right? I'm clearly not counting out the trust fund babies of the world. They're not actually fire, okay, because those kids, well, they can go on throughout their lives without working. The fact that they didn't make their own money almost always guarantees that they won't appreciate it or won't be able to not inflate their lifestyles, right? That is, after all, why plenty of fortunes get lost after a generation or two post being made. Yeah, because later generations are just spenders who don't appreciate it, right? So the real reason why I think people in their 20s may be a little bit too young is actually related to what I just talked about. Because if you made a great deal of money in less than a decade, that also means the means with which the fortune's been made has been likely very volatile, right? Crypto is a great example here. I'm sure a select few out of many of us did make a great deal of dough on crypto within a decade. The problem is the faster you make money, the closer to gambling that probably is, right? And people who have gambled and won big rarely stop gambling. And the same mentality that attracts the making of a quick fortune can lead to its own undoing. Also, by the way, if somebody exits the traditional workforce after only a handful of years, I mean, is that really enough time to understand what they're working away from? Possible, of course, just, I think, unlikely. Now, on the other side, right, what I would call the real type of gatekeeping at least the fire social forums, right? Now, let's say if you're on track to retire just a handful of years before the regular retirement age. Does it still matter, and should you still go for it, right? Example, gatekeeping age, I would say, like, let's use age 60, because that's only 2 years before one can start collecting Social Security at the earliest in the US, right? And it's even in the same decade group as traditional retirement. So is that too late to be called early? I'd say no, actually. Let's think about this in terms of math, right? Most Americans only get 2 weeks of vacation a year, of which they don't even end up using all of it, right? But we'll pretend they do. 2 weeks of vacation out of 52, right? Well, let's just call that 50 weeks a year to account for, maybe you have other holidays, official holidays and sick days, right? So 2 years would be 100 extra weeks, which is 50 extra annual vacation periods that you have just freed up. 50, okay? Imagine if you retired at 60, That's 2 years early, just 2 years. You've lined up a literal lifetime of extra vacations, right? After you jumped, you essentially doubled your vacation time from 2 weeks a year for whatever, 45, 50 years to 4. Okay, that is insane. Okay, that's just 2 years early. Not to mention the older you get, the less likely you'll be able to enjoy your free time without, aches and pains, all that stuff, right? So even 2 years in advance, practically speaking, I think is worth a lot more than, say, if you were even just in your mid to late 60s, right? So yeah, a couple of years early, I still call it a tremendous benefit, right? The earliest age is to take Social Security is 62, right? It doesn't mean that most people can do that and get by. Hitting your FIRE number even as late as, let's say, 60 would imply that you have prepared much, much better, and the level of financial security and redundancy is just much greater than what a regular retirees would even dream of, right? So yeah, any amount I think of early is totally worth being called early, right? For all these physical and mental reasons. So do I think that there is an actual ideal range, age range to retire early, right? And is it exactly when I retired? After all, we're all victims of thinking that our own experiences are the most relevant, right? My answer here, surprisingly, is no. I think I could have easily retired maybe 5 years earlier and been fine, but if I did that, I wouldn't have met my wifey. So for personal reasons, that's a no-go, a moot point, right? Similarly, I do understand that I got extremely lucky with the paying job, right? If I didn't have that, I think it would have taken me another decade to reach FIRE, so that would have put me in my mid-40s, right? Now, I think I would have been happy with that as well, right? That is how old I am now, and I still feel great, like a kid even. I mean, I love FIRE. I think it's totally worth it, and it's especially more worth it because I can easily conjure up all the images, mental images of all the various type of regular office environments that I never have to go to again. Okay, unless I want to, of course. Remember, I still volunteer, so it's not like I don't get a glimpse of that whenever I choose to, right? I do think sometimes, though, maybe I would have aimed for earlier FIRE if I have heard about the term when I was in my 20s, right? But personally, I think I had a lot of growing up to do in that decade, in my 20s, that's not really related to finance, so no regrets, right? A decade and a half of corporate work that I put in, and I think they all serve the purpose, I think it's exactly right for me. So my answer to this question, what's optimal for firing, is really easy, okay? I think it's extremely personal, and no one can answer that for you, right? Only you can. In conclusion, right, surprisingly, I think you can fire too early, but you cannot fire too late. Any amount of early, I think, is a great increase in quality of life. I get it. Everybody's situation is different, workplace, regional differences, whether they're kids or partners that are on the same level, all that can change, the equation by significant margins, right? But that's the fun part of life, right? That variation and chaos, I thank the divine all the time for giving me the freedom to just write these little rants. After all, I'd be very sad if I cared about my audience size, after all. What about you guys? When do you want to retire? Early, regular, you're never going to stop working? Please let me know in the comments below. Cheers, a la prochaine.